Good evening, everyone. Today we have with us Corinthian Kelly, and Kelly is from Newport News, Virginia, my part of the town. So
Yes,
welcome,
ma'am.
welcome, welcome. I am so excited to have you here. I have been talking previously about millenniums and rethinking leadership. Um, it is no secret that we are the leadership matters. It matters all the time, and right now, leadership is really whether you're talking from the White House to the church house to my house to your house. Leadership is center stage. And so I just wanted to have a discussion today just about where leadership is headed, where you see yourself influencing leadership, especially being a millennium. You
Mhm.
know, so before we jump in there, I just want just to let the audience know more about you and what you would like them to know that I don't know.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Fowler, for having me and having me be a part of this discussion. I think it's very important. So again, my name is Corinthian Kelly. I am from Newport News, Virginia, originally. So proud of the 757, proud of my roots.
All right.
Um, I am currently residing in Wichita, Kansas. I moved out here for grad school, so I am in my second and a half year in a master's of public administration program at Wichita State University,
All
uh,
right.
and I am working on my MPA as well as getting some certificates in city and county management, nonprofit management, and public finance. So I'm excited about that. But this whole discussion about leadership is
Yes.
very, very important because it matters, like you said. So I'm thankful to be a part of this discussion.
Well, I want to make sure that I'm inclusive in regards to generations. Leadership goes across all industries, and as you know, we are right now um, in the midst of where leadership, millennium reign, and in the workplace, and leadership is center stage. And I wanted to try to think about what I could do to help influence and shape leadership in regards to post pandemic, in regards to the landscape changing in the workplace and the workforce changing. And so I thought that I would create a platform where we could have some candid discussions. We certainly have strategic plans, succession plans, all sitting on the shelf, leadership development plans that were sitting on the shelf. And now we're at a point where everyone has to pull their plan off the shelf
Mhm.
and start over. I see you here, you're outreach manager and you're studying public administration. So I just have to jump in here and ask, are you
Mhm.
planning on running for office sometime in the future, or how do you plan on influencing our future post-pandemic with this magnificent educational journey that you have?
Well, that's a great question. So, um, working in public administration, and let me take a step back. So I'm a proud Virginia Tech grad. I'm also a Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets grad, and I got my minor in leadership studies. And my experience there, I was thinking about going into the military. So my perspective on leadership was shaped through my core experience there, where I saw some great leaders. When I think about leadership, I think about empowering others and setting others up for success. So um, after I graduated, instead of going into the military, I directed an after school program in Baltimore, Maryland, and in Richmond, Virginia. And that shaped my perspective about working with others, um, listening and having a diverse team around you, and also tapping into the strengths not only that you have but the strengths of others. That's what makes a good and successful team. So that's kind of my thoughts around leadership. Now you asked, do I have political aspirations? and
Yes.
i and I would say no right off the bat. I like objectivity. I like data. um, so I want to use those things to kind of shape recommendations. I don't necessarily want to be reactive. I think sometimes politicians can be reactive. I want to be proactive and set up plans, set up structures in place, set up systems to be successful. So if I can steer clear of politics, I would like to do that. I would want to get into the management or administrator side, if that makes any sense. So.
It does. It does. I worked in politics in California legislature. I also worked for New York senator. I've also advocated in regards to passing legislation for missing persons, because I do believe that when it comes to leadership, we need leaders that to advocate. When it comes to protest, we need leaders in regards to praying, to lead us on the path of war cry, but we also need leaders when it comes to policy making. I mean, I say, not everybody can do all three. Maybe they can, but I know that we need all three to make it happen. So we could protest today and tomorrow, but yet until we change policy, we will happen to keep protesting the same things. So that's why I was asking you, and I'm excited about your endeavors to work behind the scene and to keep those in office informed, because politicians don't know everything. They got a couple of issues that they run on, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I wanna make decisions. There's in some of my coursework, I've learned some things. One of my major takeaways was decisions are based off of a three-legged stool. All right. So the stool, there's a practical implication, thinking about things like cost benefit analysis. Does it make fiscal sense?
Yes.
All right. There is a legal stool, like is it against the law? Can we do it legally?
All right. Yes.
And then there's also political concerns. I would also add a fourth leg to that. I would also add a spiritual aspect of it in my decision makings. I think about, at the end of the day, is it right to do? So those are my thoughts, behind it. So I want to be able to make recommendations based off of those legs in my stool, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. The moral leg of it, the spiritual leg of it, being ethically sound, right, morally right. A lot of times when we talk about leadership loyalty, leadership loyalty is and being on point and being on purpose and being morally right is a two-way street. So it's not just so much as what you do as a leader, but what you do for those that you lead, right?
Absolutely.
And that is what is the heart of the matter for me. You can't talk about leadership without talking about Cooks and Posner, and that's just one. That's just to name one. When we talk about leadership challenges, we don't know everything as leaders. Politicians don't know everything as leaders, but I know that we are in the midst of the most important opportunity right now for voting, and everybody can lead. At this point, everybody. We can, if you're not old enough to vote, you can at least rally up to vote. And we need people to realize that November 3rd is the last day to vote, right? But right now, early voting is going on. So not only can we vote now, and we encourage people to vote early, we just want to be able to start leading from the front, from the middle, and from behind. Like I said, you may not be old enough to vote, but you can rally up those who are old enough and register them for next year. So talk to me about how you can see yourself in your outreach program or with the people you come in contact with to just for the next 12 days, what we could do as leaders.
Yep. So two points. I would say right now, I think we're in a crisis of credibility. So where are we getting good, sound information from? Who are we listening to? So I think it's important to raise the level of where we're getting information from. I think that's important. You can do that at any level. I would tell students that I work with, where are your sources that you're citing? Are they credible? Do you trust them? Do they have a track record of success? That's where I want you to be judging your decisions made off of. That can start in first grade through adulthood. All right. So I think that's important. And then to the point that you made a little earlier, um, I'll make this point: deeds, not words.
Mm,
So I follow people based off the fruit or what I have seen them demonstrate over time, not just one day. You can
right.
tell me anything one day, but I want you to your demonstrated track record over time of what you've done. So I try to focus on what I can control. I know what's in my power. I know that I have an opportunity to get information out about um, educational opportunities to clients that I work with. So I try to promote that. I know I have an opportunity to be a mentor, which I do. So I try to promote that. So I want people to be able to think for themselves, think critically. But there's things that everyone can do. There's not a sideline in this. Everyone can play an active role in it. But I would say first it starts with getting credible information.
I think that is excellent point to make because integrity is not just doesn't happen in just one incident, right? Integrity is actually every moment, like you said,
Absolutely.
everything you do. And I certainly believe in that because I tell you, I don't have no money in the bank. All I have is my word, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your character, your integrity,
All
absolutely.
I have, right?
That carries. That carries.
I
That matters.
talking to somebody, I don't care, even just for the moment of having an engaging engagement set up. If I'm running late, I'm running late. I'm going to make that phone call and say I'm running late because I need to set the tone for my own character, you know. And I think
Mhm.
that when we look at young men like you, and we're looking at the fact that for the next 10 years, you know, let's just start with the fact that for the past 4 years, millennium has really been the majority in the workplace. You know, we have 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day. And so for the next 10 years, we're going to have the millennials are going to actually, millennials are going to be taking over the leadership reign, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so when it
Mhm.
comes to leadership gaps, we really have to be intentional and methodical about that. So if you were right now, um, let's just say you were the Secretary of Education. Let's just go with that.
Okay. All right.
And based on your background and what you do and where you headed, what would
Mhm.
be some of the gaps that you would like to just kind of build a bridge to close so that we can build a better future for our next generation?
So when I think about that, if I was in the role of Secretary of Education, um, I would say in my role in that position, my job is to empower others. And when I say empowering others, I want to surround myself with the best and brightest in their field. I think we're as successful as our team and our network. So a smart person is not a threat to me. That's an asset. So I think that in terms of rethinking leadership, we have to think about that. It's more than one way to skin a cat. So we should be looking for different ideals from smart people and then putting them in a position for them to be successful. Let them shine. If someone is better with numbers than me, that's not a threat to me. I want them doing numbers, you know. So I want to be able to be in a position where um, I can create opportunities for talented individuals. Um, I also think that relationships are important. So, in my experience in working in education, we had a model called RTR. It stood for relationship, task, relationship. And so you can't do anything without knowing what the strengths of your team is. So that's relationship building. So I have to know who's on my team. I have to know what their strengths are. Then I have to be able to identify the gaps where their weaknesses are. Because if I'm trying to piece together things, hiring, having that information helps me. So that helps me identify gaps where I can then plug in systems to be able to solve those problems and keep us rolling, keep us financially solvent, and keeping us making impact.
Well, you talk about surrounding yourself with those who know, and that's great. A team approach. At the same time, as Constable Roy here says, you got to hire smarter. I also think we need to to situate ourselves that when it comes to hiring leadership, we
Mhm.
need to now consider. You know, very. Let me just say this: very rarely do people, organizations consider the type of leadership style that they're hiring, right? They
Mm-hmm.
think about skill sets, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I always say you have to look at leadership style. I know I came up learning about laissez-faire, authoritative
Okay.
leadership,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
I have come to know and have grown to know. I probably got a little bit knowledge that makes me dangerous. You know, just a little bit of anything. But when you look at behavior now, I can really identify transactional leadership versus
Mm-hmm.
transformational leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
servant leadership. They all have a driven and desired outcome. It's
Mm-hmm.
built for the model. And so I'm looking for us to, as leaders, to create new models, new
Mm-hmm.
leadership models that can
Mm-hmm.
take us into a post-pandemic. I mean, we're working and living in a digital world, and
Mm-hmm.
talk about relationships. What does that look like, building relationships in a digital world? What
Yep.
kind of skill set does that leader that you're hiring now, can they bring to the table when you talk about being transformational, caring
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
the people that they lead as opposed to just the goals that they're aiming for,
What I would say from a millennial standpoint, um, passion and purpose matter to me. So I'm driven by my passion and my purpose, and a leader that can tap into that, um, to me, is an effective leader. That means they're being intentional. I think that's extremely important. I think a leader has to be solutions oriented. Um,
and
they have to be. So when you're solutions oriented, to me, you take the ego out of it, you take the agenda out of it, and now you're looking at the larger picture. What is the mission? What is the agenda? What are we trying to
achieve.
accomplish?
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you're looking at it from that standpoint, it doesn't matter if my subordinate had the great idea. That's great. I want to be able to congratulate that person for being a rock star, give them a shout out, put them in a position to shine. It doesn't have to be my idea when you're surrounding yourself, like Constance said, when you're hiring smarter, you're going to get great ideas. If it works and it's going to help us accomplish that goal, that's what I want. So
And let me
that's what
just,
I think about.
and giving other people a chance to lead. They may not get it right? But you're never going to be able to, there's no just single way. There's probably a best way to do something. But you have to let people try so that you can take their ideas coupled with a few more ideas. That's why I say I love a good debate,
Yeah,
because out of a good debate comes great ideas, Otherwise, it
absolutely.
would just be a vacuum thinking about things and then trying it over and over again. So, yes, hiring smarter, surrounding yourself with
Yeah.
individuals is what we
So
really have to do.
So to that point, Dr. Fowler, those opportunities matter. Okay. So if I'm in a position to create opportunity for that person to pilot something, a new out of the box idea, that's important. Having the authority to be able to do that, to me, is what a great leader does. Says, hey, look, we've been doing it the same way for the past 5 years, and we haven't been getting the outcome. Let's try this out. I want to, and then I would say, creating the space to do that, and then the debrief. How do we check in? How do we measure success in it? When I say the debrief, after any event, whether it's successful, unsuccessful, the after action report or talking about it afterwards is critical, because you can say, hey, look, this could be a lot better if we did X, Y, and Z right in the moment, right after it. I think that's important. That way, you have some foundation to build upon for the next time you do it, or say, look, this didn't work at all, but this did. So let's keep that, and let's go back to the drawing board, in other instances.
Well, when you talk about evaluating the process that you use as a pilot, uh, oftentimes I go back to this when it talks about sustainability. How do you eat up the meat and chew out the eat up the meat and throw out the
Yeah,
bones?
chew the meat and spit out the bone. Yes.
Keep what works and throw away what doesn't work. But so here's the thing: when you talk about what works and what doesn't work, when we talk about leadership development, right?
Mhm.
Leadership development, the question that comes to the forefront for me is, how do you even know when leadership development has occurred? Is it because I went to a class? You
Mhm.
talk about the four-legged process, right?
Yeah.
Uh, did it occur just because, was I able to pilot a program? Was I able to
Mhm.
identify and look at the data and able to use the data. Because people, we have to look beyond what we see right here in front of us, right? We have to
Exactly.
be able to capture the data that
Yeah.
tells us to anticipate what's to come.
Hmm.
So I started my research on leadership because when I started looking at government, I realized that when they had this, I think it was in 2004, year 2000, the government was tasked with downsizing, doing more or less.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's what their goal was. But
Hmm.
what they failed to do, they mean research says it, is that they failed to look at sustaining the good skill sets around them. Right? So they just went
Hmm.
looking at downsizing. So we have to be able to do an overall view. And that's why I talk about leadership development. What does that look like going forward? Leaders in place today,
Yeah.
I would imagine, should be sitting around a scenario, a table of scenario, doing scenarios about what it looks like tomorrow in this digital space, right? I don't believe this digital space is going away. They used to do telework. Well,
Yeah.
telework has nothing on what we're doing right now.
That is, it's the future is now. That's here to stay. I think. I would say for a leader, professional development and investing in your people is important. Grooming them, cultivating them, putting them in positions to shine is also important. And then I think about the teach back. So if
Mm,
I have someone that is a tech person, that is a Microsoft Excel guru, I want him to not only show me, but show the rest of the team because that
okay.
increases their skill set. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that's important. The leader should be identifying skills that each of my teammates have because everyone brings something to the table. And can it be something that would benefit the whole team overall? Whether that person stays with my organization or not, it's still valuable information that I want to use to enhance the skill sets of those around me. And I think that's important. And I think a leader that does that will have a connection to that person, whether they're still with the organization or not, because they've given them an opportunity, they've invested in that person, invested in growth, which I think is important. So,
I think a lot of what we talked about today actually lead us to leadership accountability, holding one another accountable,
mm,
not only doing what we think is right in the moment, but also being accountable for when someone doesn't get it right. We talked about organizational citizens' behavior.
mhm,
That's an area where the workers in the organization want to know that they are being treated fairly.
mhm,
So now that
mhm.
we have diversity conversations going on, or whether it should be a talk going on at all, we have to have leaders that are going to stand in the gap and speak up and raise their voices. We have to be an advocate in the workplace as well as an advocate on the outside. I mean, leadership accountability, we can do all the planning we want, but if
Yeah.
we don't have leadership accountability for doing what's right, what's morally right, and what's ethically right, that is what really is the heart of the matter for me.
Hmm. You said a word there, Dr. Fowler. It's important for a leader. So I think about process and systems. I would say, what is the leader's check-in system? Like, how does the leader have a temperature check or a pulse on the organization if you don't talk to the people that are doing the work?
Yeah,
So that has to be calculated. That has to be a part of the agenda. That has to be on a person's schedule, for check-ins. I also think feedback is so important. I think employees, young professionals, millennials yearn for feedback, constructive as well as praise. I mean, the feedback is important because if I don't know you don't want me going in this direction, how will I know unless you tell me? So
yeah,
creating spaces to do that. I would also say that people process information differently. There's some people that are more vocal. There's some people that'll sit in the meeting and not say anything. So if I'm a leader, I want to have spaces for people that can talk as well as I want to have a capture sheet where people can write down questions and concerns where I get it, because that person that might be quiet still has a lot that they want to share and say. I just want to create the system where they can still share it. If that makes any
yeah.
sense.
No, 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 that makes a lot of sense. Just because a person isn't speaking in the moment doesn't mean they don't have anything to say. You know,
Absolutely.
I think a great the greatest opportunity is the ones who can listen and the ones who can take what they heard and then put it into some type of illustration, be it action. The challenging thing sometimes is going up against what's what used to be normal, right? What used to
Hmm.
be normal. And I'm just trying to get us to think about a new normal, you know,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
new
yeah.
normal. We keep trying to use the same template. And now
Hmm.
we all have an honest opportunity that we didn't ask for
Hmm.
to be able to reshape leadership, you know, to be
Hmm.
intentional about the type of leadership style that we are hiring. And when it comes to succession planning, creating a template of skill sets or competencies that help you to create a pool of leaders for succession planning. You know, and I tell you what, don't get me started on succession planning.
Oh,
Yeah.
look. I know Dr. Fowler from your military experience. Like in the military, they teach you you need to know the job of the person under you and above you. It's so important. It's like I don't know. Some people call it the if that person gets hit by a bus, you know, God forbid they get hit by a bus. But that kind of plan. If that person isn't there, who's going to pick up the slack? That's critically important. Um, to me, a great leader. One of the goals that I strive for when I directed an after school program in Baltimore, Maryland, and in Richmond, Virginia. To me, the mark of good leadership or a great center was a center running, and I wasn't even there.
Hmm.
Like I want people trained and knowledgeable enough that a beat doesn't skip whether Mr. C is in the building or not, and that takes giving people the opportunity to lead, to follow and see what I do on a day-to-day basis, having it written out what the tasks, the duties, the roles are, codifying that. That's important. All that has to be the stuff has to not only be experienced, but it has to be documented as well. Then you have to give people an opportunity to demonstrate it. So if I'm leading every day and people are used to me leading every day, they're not thinking about, all right, well, what do I do when Mr. C is not there?
Not here.
But if I've demonstrated, I said, well, today I'm going to give you the opportunity to lead this portion. Now I know how to do it. So now it's not a surprise when it happens. It's just like we do fire drills and all that kind of stuff. You're doing those drills for when things do happen. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah, yeah.
that's important.
The other reason I want to have these platforms on leadership is because if millenniums are going to be, or when millenniums begin to be the central focus of the and reigning in the workplace, they're the different type of leadership requirements that are leadership style that's required. Meaning, millenniums want someone to be able to think about them professionally, personally, career wise,
Mhm.
and and believe it or not, when it comes to the medical requirements. And so when we talk about um, millennials and leadership, I'm thinking about the fact that millenniums have the tendency, are now known for uh, two things. One, they will not hesitate to switch jobs, to switch
Mhm.
organizations. You know, they
Mhm.
always said people quit leaders, not organizations. Well, now I think
Mm.
we quit organizations in regards to the fact that if you don't offer me a health plan that takes care, because we're all living in a different era. You know, we've all been impacted by some type of trauma. Every generation has been impacted by trauma. If you look it up and you look up the fact of generational trauma, you know, and you'll be surprised of what has been isolated in regards to the baby boomers and then the generation from
Mm.
there to the millennials. And so now we have to consider the type of medical help that we're providing people. You know,
Mhm.
are people our first thought when it comes to medical health plans that the organizations are offering? And that's one of the things that millennials will say, if you're not taking care of those things, then I'm going to shift to someone who can, you know?
Oh, it's incumbent upon the leader to care. You have to care. So you know, myself and my work are two separate entities. When I say that, I'm a person, I'm a human being that has feelings, outside of my work, which is important. It's important for a leader to understand that. I would say for millennials, again, passion is important, opportunity is important, but it's holistic.
Yeah, yes.
It's holistic. You can't separate one without the other. I would say millennials also are used to working. A millennial doesn't necessarily work traditional hours, 9 to 5.
All
A
right.
millennial could do work at midnight. If you have a smartphone, I can check emails and respond to emails, after hours. And if I'm passionate about what I'm doing, if I know that you care about me, I will definitely do that. So I think that's demonstrated. I also think it's important for a leader to have times and spaces where they get the team together, where you talk about things other than work.
All right.
So I'll give a great example. I had a boss in an organization I stayed with for 8 years because the culture was so great.
Mm.
When we ate together lunch, the last thing we talked about was work. We talked about everything. She was intentional about that, where we're going to have fun. We're going to talk about things outside of work. The work is going to be there. All right. But just that opportunity to recharge, or what are you excited about? What are you passionate about? That's important. Those conversations are important as well.
I think that if we took a moment as leaders to think about what was it about us that caused people to follow us, to trust us. If we can think about those things and compartmentalize it for a moment, so that we can do a self um, uh, reflection. You
Mm-hmm.
know, what is it that we're bringing to the table, or what that we could bring to the table? I think you hit on something that I hadn't thought about. You said, let people lead early.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Mm-hmm.
just when you're not there, not when
Yeah.
it's convenient, but let them lead early. And I think that's very crucial. And at this point, before we sign off, when we talk about discerning leadership, that
Mm-hmm.
means in regards to looking at leadership holistically, because that's my
Mm-hmm.
word. I don't think you knew that, but that's my word.
I did not know that.
Looking at leadership holistically, leading all the time and having that space that you say that you could sit and have lunch together. I don't think I can recall in my earlier days of going into the military that we set aside the time. It was always separate, troops over here, leaders
Mm-hmm.
over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when you can build that relationship, that you could be there for them in their personal life and be there for them in their career, professional life. You
Mm-hmm.
can't think about a person from 9 to 5. You're trying to have a conversation about policies and principles, and they're thinking about what's happening at home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I had a general who wrote on one of my recommendations. He said, a good leader is one who takes responsibility for their truths.
That, to me, that's spot on. That's spot on. So I'll use another military analogy that I got at ROTC. Leadership is like moving a piece of yarn or string across the table. You can't push a piece of yarn across the table with your finger. You have to pull it along. All right. So that means you have to inspire, you have to motivate, you have to have your subordinates or people willing to follow you because they see what you're doing and you're modeling how you want them to act. You're modeling the enthusiasm that you want to have. You're modeling the positivity that you want them to carry. You're modeling the openness that you want them to have. So if you're not doing it, how would they base it off of? So
No, and so you're absolutely right. And I think we have to look at the language that we use, right? I know when I talked about strategic planning,
mhm,
I had to discover what my frustration was, and I didn't discover it by
mhm,
myself. And my
mhm.
frustration was pulling people along, or waiting for somebody to catch up. That's what I said.
Okay.
Waiting
Yeah.
for somebody to catch up, and I was already here. Not that I'm boasting, but it's just
Mhm,
that if you know what your lane is, then people need to understand and work together. We're on the same highway, but we all
mhm.
have different lanes. We're going in the same direction.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
all aiming for the same end goal. And in this time and season that we're living in right now, I think it's important that we discern who our leaders are, discern our role as a leader. You know, you may not be thinking about going into public election offices tomorrow there, Mr. C, but you may be able to go in there for a short season, or you may be able to deliberately, you know, plant yourself in a space where you can definitely be heard, even if it's behind the scene. I don't have a problem being behind the scene, because here's what I know. Politicians don't know every issue, and they got constituent in their office. They got people in the office that work a set of policies, a area of concern, and with a group of constituents or organizations. And my job was to go out there and find out why they want something, you know, so I can look at it from both sides, you know.
Absolutely.
So it's not just something that benefits the person or organization, but that it benefits the constituents with whom I represent, you know.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's not an easy task to go out there and be an elected official, but if you're going to step out there, you got to do so with integrity. You know, leadership matters, voting matters, you know, democracy matters. So right now I'm saying to everyone, leadership matters. And so we cannot exist as a leader in the organization, not think about the leader we want to be to impact our community, because the people you're leading live in a community.
Yeah, and something I'll add to that. I would also add action matters. So you don't have to be the director of something to act. All right, acting in your community means getting involved, or being a mentor, or coaching a baseball team, or being a volunteer. So leaders, you can be an informal leader without the title.
Yes.
I would say that the action, the demonstration, matters as well, to all those points that you just said. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be the head of the board to do some things that make a difference.
Well, let me just say as we close that leadership is definitely the heart of the matter. We've always talked about learning, distant learning, right? Now we're doing distant leading.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
And so I just want to know, I just want those who are listening out there, I thank you for listening. And I want to give us a call to action that we all take accountability and responsibility for what role we are going to play going forward post-pandemic. And that we don't wait till January. We don't wait till November the 3rd to get in action. We should be figuring out what that looks like right now, you know, carving out a plan to execute as soon as possible. So you have enough time for retries, you know, enough time to rethink it. And again, I'll say this, voting ends on November the 3rd. I can't say that loud enough. Voting is actually going on right now for those who are able to early vote. And I just say to you, go and get your vote in. Go get your vote on. Speak up, stand up, and vote up. And thank you so much again there, Mr. C. Any last words?
Oh, I appreciate again the opportunity, Dr. Fowler. This was an awesome conversation. So thank you for your discernment and wisdom in putting this together. I would say to those voters, make sure you vote. But then after that vote is cast, there's still work to be done in your community, right where you are. So there's work that has to be done before the election and after.
Great. Thank you, audience, for listening. Thank you for your comments, and please share this in regards to leadership. It's not just about a topic, but it's about our future for our generations to come, and what we're doing right now impacts tomorrow. So it's about growing tomorrow's leaders today. So thank you once again, and everyone have a blessed day.
Thank you.
So Mr. C, it's taken a moment to end the broadcast. Not sure, it's still live, so I'm trying to make sure that we're able to capture everyone's comments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just want you to see their comments. You know, those who were listening were really listening. So I thank you so much for the value. We'll have to have a part 2. Let's think about and talk about that in regards to post elections. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.